agile brand. Welcome to the Innovation Economy podcast, where we look at the factors that drive business growth, including how people, processes, platforms, and places work together to create the future of work. I'm your co-host, Bonnie Habian. I'm a CMO, author, speaker, branding expert, and passionate content creator. This episode is part of our Brand the Change series, which focuses on how entrepreneurs and engaged employees can leverage their personal brand and superpowers to support their company, showcase their skill sets, and create value. To listen to the latest episodes or to sign up for the Innovation Economy newsletter, go to innovationeconomy.show or click follow on your favorite podcast app to make sure you hear the latest episodes. And now, onto the show. Today, we're talking about the impact of storytelling, specifically through the very well-known but competitive landscape of the TED Talk. More and more professionals are targeting the TEDx stage in the hopes of standing on the infamous red dot. I'm pleased to have two guests, Jeff Berwin, a seasoned TEDx speaking coach and storyteller, and Tom Picazza, organizer, event manager, and professional speaking coach, to share their insights on crafting compelling stories, how to land a TEDx talk, and how professionals are leveraging the TED platform to grow a brand. I've had the honor and pleasure of working with them both during my recent journey as a TEDx speaker. We'll be sharing the key elements of storytelling and marketing and branding, and how platforms like TEDx leverage storytelling, and how individuals can approach the TEDx journey to elevate their brand. So thank you both for joining me. It is such a pleasure. Two of my favorite people on at the same time.
We're part of the Bonnie fan club, right, Tom?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's dig right in. I want to go to you, Jeff. Tell me a little bit about storytelling, what you're seeing, because I see it so much with marketing and businesses and branding, and I know you're a big, avid storyteller advocate. So tell me what you're seeing about it from a business sense.
Well, from a business sense, I think we can agree that we're past the age of information and now we're in the age of over-information. And if you ever just go home and your brain is exhausted, that's because you're getting so much into that brain that's way much more than we can handle. And storytelling is the oldest thing we do as communicators and as a species, right? It cuts right through it. It's that right brain, experiential. It cuts through all the data dump. And it brings things to life. It makes us relatable. And I think now more than ever, it makes us more human, especially in the age of AI. And in marketing, the famous marketing axiom is people buy from people they know, like, and trust. And it's one thing to say, you could trust me, but who cares? But if you tell a story, a real story about yourself, how you overcame a challenge or something, people know, I like that person.
I totally agree. It's all about connection. And, I think it's been such a powerful evolution, especially, you're right, in the middle of everything that's so darn crazy and busy, that we're starting to see more of this. And there's no better way to really leverage storytelling than to speak, right? To get on a stage and speak. And you're seeing more and more people doing that or wanting to do that. And as a result, I imagine, at least maybe it's just something I've paid attention to more, and I'm going to ask Tom, but I feel like I'm seeing more and more people want to do that as a way to differentiate themselves, hence the TED Talk, the TEDx stage. So, Tom, what are you seeing? You've been doing this for a while, and I'd love to hear your perspective on growth and why you think people are choosing to go that route.
So I think there's a couple things going on, particularly with a TEDx talk. One is TED has so successfully leveraged that brand and legitimized it, and it passes on to any of the speakers. And so you have a couple things going on all at once. And some of them are a little more, like, anyone who's business savvy understands that as soon as they're a TEDx speaker, like, that gives them a cachet, that gives them credibility. And so a lot of the time we spend as organizers is weeding out people just trying to sell books, because we're looking for the people that TED's looking for. And that are the people with something authentic to say. And I think that's, even with the people just trying to sell books, so to speak, I think the TED stage is a recognized place where you can have a potential impact on a very large scale. And it's one of those things that's just tantalizingly close and yet still highly competitive. And so that just makes it all the more attractive to a lot of participants, I think.
You summarize that very well. It's tantalizing close, but still competitive. And I think that is probably the golden jewel where people strive to do it and say, well, will I have a shot at doing it? And it's that
Right.
competitive nature. But let's talk about the process a little bit. What is that process like? And I want both of you to give me some insights on both sides. I know, you're the one that's looking at these auditions coming in, Tom, but I know, Jeff, you're the one who actually has to prepare these folks. And it starts right with you, personal firsthand experience of you knowing exactly what a bit that process is about. So, Tom, give me a little bit of perspective. What have you seen? Has it become more competitive? What goes into making the sausage of getting those 10 people?
So I've seen like it's always been highly competitive. And TEDx Gainesville, we've enjoyed a fair amount of success, but we're still growing. And so we get a certain number, we get a couple hundred applicants a year. And if anything, for us, it's become more competitive because we used to pretty much entirely select from submissions. And TED actually encourages you not to do that. They want you to select somebody very specifically and very intentionally curate your stuff. And so what they ask you to do is to find people in your community and talk at your event very formally. And so the one you just spoke at was the first time we had actually successfully done that. Not that we were having problems with it, but it was just we were in a position, we were well known enough to within Gainesville to reach out and ask and get the buy-in back. And so all that did was make it more competitive for the submissions because we suddenly had half of our slots available. So like it went from like a 10% to a 5%.
I remember we were having someone like from Peru or somebody was coming from far, far away at some point. I mean, there were people from all over the place.
Yeah, exactly. And and I love that. And some communities, some organizers will only want people from their community. And I specifically want both because I want Gainesville to have the benefit of people from all over the world. And I want those people from all over the world to see the benefits of Gainesville and spread the word, any word that Gainesville has to spread. So that's been very successful. That's been a very good cocktail for us.
No, and I will say this to anyone that wants to listen. If you want an amazing TEDx experience, you apply to Gainesville. I got to tell you, it will always be something so incredibly close to my heart. And it was just a dream come true. Now, Jeff, let me ask you, because I know you probably get a ton of people who come to you who want to learn where to apply to be a TEDx speaker. I'd love to know, A, how many of those actually go through the process and say, okay, you know what, I'm in, because it's a little rigorous. And B, what are you seeing from a trend perspective from the last couple of years? More people, less people? So it's a two-pointed question.
Yeah, it is rigorous, more people. So many organizers will do one, maybe two events a year, have 5 to 15 spots, and get 300 to 500 applications. And that's trending up. Not all those applications are well prepared. What started changing it for the worse was PR firms years ago started throwing people at TED. And
God,
that
yes.
diluted, right?
Really?
Tom?
Yeah.
What do you mean? What do you mean? So I need to understand that. PR?
Oh, go ahead, Tom. We're both like frustrated together.
So one of the things as an organizer that happens to me is because I make myself available and easy to find via TED.com. Like they find me on LinkedIn, and then I get pitched. Which leads to a whole other discussion about how to approach TEDx organizers that you find online. But some of the things that I get are from these PR like secretaries, and there are varying qualities and there are varying sort of things. And some of them even claim to be speakers bureaus. Like we have a whole cadre of people and they don't even know that they're violating TED's rules. And so or it might be somebody trying to like puff their chest out and have like their girlfriend act as their secretary and be like, Mr. So-and-so wants to speak at your event. And you can tell, you can smell it a mile away. It is so.
Oh yeah, or like I'm a motivational speaker. I'd be perfect for the TED stage. I could give a 30-minute talk that I've given all around the country for years. I'm like, you don't know what you're talking.
And why even go that route if this is kind of like that platform to get to that next level if you're already there. No, that's very, very interesting. But do you see Jeff, when people understand the commitment that is involved, I imagine you look at coachability, marketability, things of that sort. What do you see when folks come to you? What percentage of those who actually come to you end up going through the process?
First thing I say to people is, are you okay with getting no? And if I add even a whiff of entitlement, I won't take them as a client. They're not entitled to get a TEDx talk. They got to be okay with, are you willing to apply many times? Are you patient? And is it an idea worth spreading? So I have a very specific process, which is unusual to get people even to the application point. But interestingly, even though we're talking about how valuable this is for one's business, I acknowledge it in my first phone call. And then I say, okay, now that I've heard that, you need to put that away. Because if you don't have an idea that you would go to the mat for, because initially, right, Tom, they're like, this is going to be good for my business. And I just want to stifle the yawn.
Right.
All right, this is an idea that should make somebody's life better anywhere in the world. Indonesia, Spain, Kansas, Canada, right?
Yeah, I think that is something that gets lost, right? So I know, and when someone asked me, I'm like, well, gosh, I probably practiced it 250 times or more. You have to have a sense of passion, a sense of true belief in it, a sense of you feel like you're making a difference in order to get you through that process. I just don't know how else you do it.
Yeah.
You've got to feel strongly about it from a genuine, authentic standpoint.
And the measurements I've seen, like, it's not just like a lot of no, like the ratio is somewhere between like 85 and 100 to 1 as far as like applications to acceptances. Like it is a job.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh
like it turns into a job. Like,
yeah, which made it super special. And, I think, I think one of the things I do want to ask you though, is because you do have people who may come here or want to do this speech in hopes of getting to a different level. What have you both seen? Have you seen anything where it's been life-changing or placed people in a trajectory or position that they otherwise would not have had?
So an early client years ago, a medical doctor out in Portland, Oregon, not a professional speaker, which by the way is a plus because it's a TED talk. It's a conversation. It's not a speech. It never will be a speech. So she had a remarkable story. She came to me and she said, I'm a doctor. And not long ago, I lost my sister due to medical error at a famous West Coast hospital. And she, as a doctor, she dealt with that. Compelling story. And she ended up getting a talk at one of the most difficult TEDx organizers, TEDx Fargo. And not the most brilliant speaker, but she did it. I helped her craft the talk, told her story, how to identify medical error as the third biggest cause of death. And, before the TEDx talk was released, that hospital was stonewalling her, no publicity, trying to hide it. Yeah, the TED talk is released. All of a sudden, the Portland Oregonian does a full page spread. And all of a sudden, that hospital is like, yes, we need to talk about this, doctor. And she got speaking gigs all around the country and about this topic. So it is what's remarkable and unique about TED, the TEDx stage. In many ways it's unique, but not the least of which the credential is so high that people will pay attention and people will watch it all over the world for years. So it has longevity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything you've seen interesting, Tom?
Well, just overall, like just following people on social media, I noticed like an uptick in their careers and their work. Some specific speakers, Farrah Smith spoke on our stage 2 years ago, and she's expanded her work. She does youth coaching and she works with like sea wildlife organizations and things. And she was in a place where she liked very much. And so I know that to have left that opportunity she was talking about, I know that she had gotten some serious traction in her work.
Yeah, well, it was life-changing for me, just not even from that perspective, because my I would say my motivation for doing it was different.
Yeah.
I do think you're right. A lot of folks do it with the motivation of their career or next steps. And listen, that's smart, very strategic. If you feel passionate and love what you do and you're able to bring more business, God bless you, right?
You love podcasts, the stories, the laughs, the unexpected turns. But when this episode ends, the silence starts. Not anymore. Audiobooks.com turns that silence into your next great adventure. With over 450,000 titles, from bestsellers to hidden gems, your love for listening just found its new best friend. And because you already know the joy of audio, we're giving you 3 free audiobooks to start your journey. Imagine your favorite podcast, now with unlimited episodes. That's audiobooks.com. Keep the story going. Sign up for your free trial at audiobooks.com/podcastfree today. Because for podcast lovers like you, the end of an episode is just the beginning. That's audiobooks.com/podcastfree.
I do want to ask you this. So let's talk a little bit about this. I know folks who are listening will probably, they're going to be listening because they want some tips, or they want to understand, what makes a good speech. Let's go back to this storytelling again.
Okay.
What are some of the elements of that you feel people really need to understand when they are speaking or looking to speak on that stage? Can you give me maybe both of you 3 things that you look for in those potential speeches?
Now, are you talking about from the terms of like the initial pitch, or just as we work, or just yes, or overall, or?
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I think let me do you from the initial pitch, and I'll do Jeff from the actual elements, because you are looking at those pitches and you're going to want to see something very specific.
Yeah, and I think this is a place where a lot of overthinking happens, and this is also a place where where I kind of have to laugh at what I see a lot of TEDx coaches advertise. There's certain language that's used often, and one line in particular happens, like I see it over and over again. And it's like, we'll put you in the mind of the organizer. And I just have to laugh because in many ways it's not that deep. like they've cracked some code. And
There's no secret code. Oh my goodness.
and so like the main thing, and this goes a little bit to what I was talking about before with like how to approach a TEDx organizer. If you find them on LinkedIn, like there's practicalities involved. And so I'm looking for just a couple things. 1, I want to know who you are. 2, I have a good idea. And 3, follow directions. Like those are my 3 pillars that I always give advice on. And it's the kind of advice that nobody wants to hear because it's not cracking the code. But as an organizer, I have my own full-time life. I'm trying to help my family and support them and do things. And I am doing this event, which is its own full-time job plus. And so I don't have time to listen to your life story, especially if you're just approaching me at random on LinkedIn. Like I just don't. I try and be polite. I'm not angry about it. It's complimentary, but I can't give you the attention you need. And I certainly don't have time to consider your pitch. And because all I can tell you, and what I end up always telling these people is we will be posting our submissions on our social media, follow us there. And then within that application, there are very basic, just who are you? What do you do? What is your talk about? And then the biggest thing I see is we'll ask for a video between 2 and 3 minutes, just introducing yourself and your topic. And this happens enough that it doesn't exclude you from getting selected. I've selected a lot of people who didn't follow this specific question, but I'm always, as an organizer, a little bit put off when somebody just posts some blanket thing on it, or just a link to another speech, or just a link to something that's made to sell their product as introducing them as a speaker. And that doesn't tell me who you are. That doesn't tell me what you're talking about. And that tells me that you just want to sell books, which TED specifically doesn't want. And it goes to that coachability aspect where, like, did you read the instructions? Do you understand the assignment? And that just goes back to, I use theater metaphors a lot because that's my background, but any working actor understands that, you have to audition a lot, and you can do everything correct and not get cast. And also when to do what the casting director is asking for. Like that's
simple things.
Yeah,
simple things.
Very, very, very simple things.
They try to take shortcuts too. And I learned that through Jeff. You can't. You have to be specific to whatever the specific organization is asking for. You need to give that to the specific organization. So that, I don't think I would ever reach out via LinkedIn. That would be someone that doesn't have any insight. And I think part of the beauty of the TEDx, right, or at least for me, you want to approach it strategically. You need to understand it, really kind of do a little research to heighten your chances of even being considered.
Exactly. And I'm not even saying don't do that, but there's a way to do it, and there's a questions to ask when you do that. Like, the best thing to do, if you find me there or any other TEDx organizer, you don't ask them to be included. That's a little, like you're saying, entitled. Like they get so many questions about that. But ask them, like, are you accepting speakers? What is your website? What are your guidelines? Do you have advice? Like, start a conversation.
Yeah. Of course. What about you, Jeff?
Oh, so many things. I agree with everything Tom said. There's a great phrase: nobody wants to see your home movies. So when I teach people about storytelling, nobody wants to see your home movies. You do, and not even you don't. And storytelling is not a list of your achievements and your resumes. Great storytelling focuses on pivotal moments where you have epiphanies, where there's a change of direction, a new course of action. And even though it's your story, it's not about you. It's not about you. We're looking for what is the anchoring of the story that people hearing or watching your story go, oh, yeah, me too. It's the way to be relatable. And in a TEDx talk, some people think I'm going to be telling my story and that's going to be my talk. No, it's not. Everything has to be subservient to the idea worth spreading, and storytelling is an aspect. And in many cases, it's a springboard into the idea worth spreading. But this is an idea venue. It's not a storytelling venue. Do the moth. Do something else. So technique-wise, my all-time favorite technique is it's not a list of achievements. It's not about how wonderful you are. It's about how you overcame challenges, but not so deep that people are squirming if it's like something traumatic. And you're coming out the other side, or at least giving people hope. I've yet to see a good TEDx talk that, again, you weren't better by the end of the talk. You were elevated with ideas and hope. And that's what a great speaker does, by the way. I think a great speaker has 3 hats to wear: storyteller, teacher, and hope giver.
I love that. I hope people who are listening are taking notes. Storyteller, teacher, and hope giver. That's beautiful. That's a beautiful thing. I'm going to have to do a post about that. So that brings me back to something else I want to ask. So I do think sometimes people get confused. What is the difference between TED and TEDx? And I have heard recently that there have been some TEDx speeches that have been elevated to a TED talk.
So TED started out in California. A bunch of the tech guys there in the 80s started having their own events, and they would get up and talk. And somebody figured out that this would be kind of cool to make it a little more popular. And that's where TED started. TED's actually an acronym. It stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. And so that was the focus of all the topics there. And the first TED talk.
Wait a minute. I have to ask you a question. I just need to go back.
Sure.
You're saying a bunch of tech guys started this.
Yeah, as far as I understand. Out in California, it's like
that's interesting.
I think even in the Silicon Valley area, but I could be wrong. But yeah, so at some point they get so popular that the organization that's now governing it decides to license it out, and it's almost like the joke I use is almost like it's like a McDonald's. It's a franchise. It's like McTed's, and that's where you get the X from. And what that means is that TED has allowed a group of organizers to use their branding and operate under guidelines that they provide to produce a show that looks and feels like a TED talk. And so what they're giving people is a playbook. And some of the reason why people might have challenges either finding an event to apply to, or it's because it's like, again, like movie stuff, I'm a nerd, but like it's like the Rebel Alliance. They're just these little cells independently organized all over the place that all have a common philosophy and playbook, but they don't talk to each other. They're all a little bit different. They all just have permission to use the branding. And so because that's where people get into some of the challenges, finding even an event to apply to. Yeah.
And the inconsistency that you see from one place to the next.
Yep, exactly.
And what Tom has referred to, by the way, there are 4 major rules of TED. And when people in business think they're going to use this to sell their books, the first rule of TED: no selling from the stage, no fundraising.
Yep. Right.
So in the application is like, they overdo, I'm an author and I'm building my brand. Good TEDx organizer is going to be like, nope, next.
Yeah.
Because they don't get it. And it's all on the TED website. They list the criteria. I mean, it's all right there. People have to do the work.
I do have to tell you something funny. So you either find the people that really get excited, that, oh my gosh, that is so cool, or other people who have no idea what you're talking about. Because when I told a friend I was doing a TEDx talk, they said, I didn't know FedEx has talks. I said, oh my God, a FedEx talk. I said, well, maybe they will now. I don't know. But I just thought that was so funny. And I used that all the way through. Either you know it or you don't. And then someone else said, are you
Right.
having a sex talk? I said, no, no sex talk. It's a TEDx talk.
It's not that kind of talk.
No.
First of all, that's hilarious. But what a great tagline! A FedEx talk. We help you with your delivery every time.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah.
There could be something with that, I don't
Maybe
know.
there is.
There's some kind of synergy there. But yeah, I think it's interesting. And have you either of you known, or is it true that you can become a TED, it can be elevated to a TED talk if you do a TEDx?
There's no reason, like, I'm not aware of one, but it's probably happened. And it's certainly because my understanding of the actual TED process is you get nominated by somebody, and then the TED committee reviews that and makes that selection. And I don't see any reason why they wouldn't draw from this decades long slew of speeches if they need something for their programming.
Yeah.
That just kind of makes sense for them.
What has happened recently, in occasional cases, I don't know, maybe you do, Tom, the algorithms, but what has happened is some TEDx speakers got elevated onto the TED website more visibly. That's been happening the last couple of years, but it's still a TEDx talk. But don't forget, some of the biggest views TED talks are TEDx talks. Brene Brown, most specific, right? 50 million views. TEDx Houston. So it's really not a big deal. I've had some clients like, I want to be on the TED stage. I don't want to do TEDx. Big mistake, because it's mysterious how you get invited onto that. And TEDx is the brand of TED. So
you're right. It's TED. People don't really know the difference. They just say TED. They get it.
You love podcasts, the stories, the laughs, the unexpected turns. But when this episode ends, the silence starts. Not anymore. Audiobooks.com turns that silence into your next great adventure. With over 450,000 titles, from bestsellers to hidden gems, your love for listening just found its new best friend. And because you already know the joy of audio, we're giving you 3 free audiobooks to start your journey. Imagine your favorite podcast, now with unlimited episodes. That's audiobooks.com. Keep the story going. Sign up for your free trial at audiobooks.com/podcast free today. Because for podcast lovers like you, the end of an episode is just the beginning. That's audiobooks.com/podcast FREE.
All right. So I want to ask you on both sides 3 things that you feel are good parts of any. Like if people are listening, I know you've given me a couple of the, the teaching, the providing hope, et cetera, but are there any other kind of criteria or 3 things that you would say are very, very important in developing this kind of TEDx talk or this topic that you're trying to kind of pitch?
Something I tell speakers often, because I'll ask them, what's your speech about? And blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, that's great. Awesome. Explain that to a 6-year-old. And that answer is your actual talk. And that distillation process. Something else I say, and I think this was in one of the MP3s I sent you when you were working on yours, you have one chance to say one idea one time. So like, you're not giving the Bible, you're giving a sermon. Like it's not encyclopedic. It's meant to start a conversation. So you can leave stuff out, and it's better if you do. So.
Right.
Yeah, totally agree with that. TED has a phrase called the through line. I translate as the connecting thread, the one visible thread of the idea that is visible throughout the whole talk. So a lot of people, totally right, Tom, is like, how do I say everything I know in 12 minutes? Well, you're already on the wrong foot, right? It's not. It's an idea that through a story and then science and evidence and calls to action and how to do it. And it's visible, the connecting thread, the main idea should be visible to the audience by the first 2 minutes of the talk. Right. And then it just carries them through.
I felt it was it was like a piece of art. That and you both kind of told me that. I mean, I'm laughing because Tom, I was definitely the type A in his group. You need to relax. You need to trust the process. I'm like, I got to memorize this now.
You were saying that like day one.
2
I'm like,
months before. She's like,
listen,
she's like, Jeffrey, I need to memorize it now. I'm like, it's January. It's
you've got
just
time.
about
You've got no. I
in
really
hand.
don't.
Tom knows
You
what
know.
he's doing.
He did. It was funny though. I'm like, all right, he's so chill, and I can definitely see. But you know what? I ended up loving him because he was like, listen, it's not. He was just gave this most amazing kind of pumped up motivational speech that the night before that we were all so grateful for. So it was those little things, and I do feel that as well though. And getting back to the speech itself, it's like you create this piece of art and it continues to evolve, and you go back a little bit, you put a little paint here, and you come back and you chip a little bit away of here, and before you know it, you get to a point you could continue forever and ever, but you get to a point where you really do feel like you have the best of it's the best you can absolutely do. Like you just at that point in time, you can't do any better, and that is such a fulfilling feeling. So that's kind of where I felt a little bit like my bucket was full. So one other thing I wanted to ask, looking ahead, what trends do you see really emerging in the realms of public speaking, storytelling, and really the TED Talks? With, you brought up an excellent point, Jeff, with the evolution of AI. Will storytelling become even more important? Because I'm a user of AI and I am sorry, it does not have the heart, spirit, hope. Some of the stories, it's just not there. Maybe it will be one day. I don't know. But where do you see storytelling and this whole taking the stage thing in this age of such a digital space that we find ourselves in, social media, influencers? I still felt like I saw people love that live experience. So what do you guys think?
Well, a number of years ago, I got to interview the retiring CEO of AT&T, and he said in the 20th century it was about the data, and we still think it is, but he said the 21st century belongs to the storytellers and the right
Wow.
brain. What we used to call soft skills, he said it's about these are the old soft skills are now essential skills, and this is the head of AT&T, and this is like 15 years ago. I interviewed him,
Oh,
and
wow.
it's true. It's true. He was right. No dummy. Storytelling done right, learning it's a craft. Even though we're very few, a lot of people don't want to tell their stories. Well, my uncle was this natural storyteller. It's an acquired craft. We're wired for it,
Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
is a craft and it's an art. It's more essential than ever. It's tied to the big catchword of the day, which is I just want to be authentic, and that word drives me a little crazy, but that's all right. Like the word du jour. But I like the intention, and you're being authentic by just sharing a part of your life, knowing you're giving a gift. It's not about you, it's about the common humanity. And that may be, I'm impassioned about storytelling, but I think it may be one of the saving graces of a troubled world.
Yeah, I love that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
You think so too? What do you see, Tom, in terms of, if you can be doing this for a long time because it's a lot of work?
yeah. Well, it's funny. This makes me think of, and I talked a little bit about this at the after party. People have been lamenting people in theater have been lamenting the problem and the potential end of theater for literally like 1,000 years. Like theater's in this perpetual state where it thinks it's dying, and it will never die. And the reason why it will never die is because it relies exactly on what you're talking about. It's that connection that it achieves, and that supersedes so many things. I think the push toward authenticity, which I've been taking a lot of meetings talking about authenticity lately, and it's and the goals in these meetings. I'm talking with other trainers, and they want to go beyond that standard feel of like a typical corporate training where you're just talked at and you're just given the set of values that doesn't really have a lot of meaning and all this other stuff. And the whole point of doing that is, and I think authenticity is a substitute word for AI is going to create a lot of artifice. And so we want the BS detectors and everybody's very, very finely tuned, especially in today's world. And we want to know that we're looking at something that has a reality to it and that has something that you can connect to it and that has an actual basis in an actual value system and not just one that's purported and looks good on spreadsheets. So
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think it's tied to intention. So a number of
yes,
years ago,
yes,
I do a lot of workshops, and typically they're great, but they're not always in front of the right audience. And years ago, I got invited to do a workshop for a Boston IT company, and it turned out not to be my people. Why? It was a bunch of 20 somethings in sales, and they
mm,
just wanted the tool. Give me the tool to close the sale. And it was not my peeps. And what I learned from that is that don't use something like this to close the sale. Use it to build a relationship.
yeah,
That's
Yeah.
what story, right? If your intention is I just want to get a bigger check and
Yeah.
use
Yeah.
a story to do it, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. So, want to end it on this note. I try to give my listeners something actionable after each podcast. If you could both give me 3 pieces of advice you would give to an aspiring TEDx talker or someone that just wants to become a really amazing storyteller, what would be 3 pieces of advice each of you would give to them? I'll start with you, Jeff.
Well, I'll focus on storytelling. The first thing I want people to do is realize your stories matter. However, not all stories will have the same impact or effect, but that's okay. I would say to your listeners, get an Excel spreadsheet, get a journal, whatever, and on the top of it, just say the time when, dot, dot, dot. And I want you to list one sentence, story ideas from your life. Put them in categories: health, relationships, parents, family, business, whatever. Because I want everybody to know your story. You have thousands of stories. You just haven't taken the time to identify them. And what you want to do with that list is use the time when I blank and take a moment to say, might you use that story? What could be the lesson or teaching point? A lot of them you won't use, but you're going to write a book someday. You're going to do a speech. You can do a TEDx talk. So start your story inventory, because that's money in the bank, not only the financial bank, but the psychological bank, and just do it without judgment. The big mistake is, as you start your story inventory, is like, I'm not sure I'm going to ever use that or not. It's too early to make that judgment. So look back, and it's sacred space. We've lived lives. You have gazillion stories, and some of those will be pure gold. The next thing I would do is, again, it's not a resume. I would focus what are the big pivotal moments, and that's what you develop. And you focus epiphanies, light bulb moments. And the third tip, my all-time favorite about great storytelling, is we are, at the end of the day, we're creatures like everybody else. We process through our senses. And we humans, our visual sense dominates. Dogs, the smell dominates, etc. Focus, use descriptive language to take us there with you. Take us into the car, on the walk, in the conversation, in the boardroom, and bring it to life. I call it movie making for the imagination. And if you think of the root word imagination, it's what? It's image. So
Right.
we
Right.
humans think in imagery. So start your story inventory, focus on epiphany moments, and use descriptive language, especially imagery.
Excellent. Okay, Tom.
Nice.
People are really going to be listening closely because they're going to be applying. So go ahead.
Yeah. So I think as far also with overthinking, I think there's also a lot of imposter syndrome, and I think people talk themselves out of things a lot. And so my first bit of advice is, yes, you absolutely can, and there's probably something that you feel so strongly about that you absolutely should. The measurement, how you know whether or not you should, is, do you feel so strongly about this like you can't stop talking about it? Does it keep you up at night? Is it something that just dominates your thinking? Then yeah, it's probably something worth sharing. And quite honestly, you don't have to be a good speaker to land a TEDx talk, and that's going to sound very misleading. It helps, but as long as you are entirely yourself, the metaphor is dating. Like, you can do all of these things that supposedly, like, but what's advice you always hear? Just be yourself. And what I tell speakers is, you are yourself turned up to 11. You are your best self, but you are still yourself. And then just do your due diligence, and my other, present yourself as best as you can, and then you're playing math. And the best metaphor I can do there is, like, let's say you have a set of dice and you're playing a game, and the only winning condition on that game is to roll 12, 2 6-sided dice. Just keep rolling the dice. They'll hit. They will hit eventually. And then as soon as that becomes math, something in my brain sort of clicks, where it's just like, oh, well, this is just a process. and then you can just sort of enjoy the ride. And like it is all of these wonderful things, but it is put on by people. You're a person, you're talking to other speakers who are people. Like there will be moments, but don't let that dominate you or intimidate you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, thank you both. I've said it before, but incredibly just blessed to have met you both. And a big thank you to both Jeff and Tom for their insights on storytelling and for sharing their deep experiences on the TEDx journey. It's clear storytelling, it's just not an art, it's a strategic tool for anyone looking to make an impact. So until next time, keep crafting your stories. Why? Because your idea might just be the next big thing. You never know. And if you're looking for more information about Jeff and Tom, their information will be in the links in the show notes. Thanks again for listening to the Innovation Economy podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe on your podcast channel of choice and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can access more episodes of the show at www.innovationeconomy.show. The Innovation Economy is produced by Missing Link, a Latina-owned, strategy-driven, creatively fueled production co-op. From ideation to creation, they craft human connections through intelligent, engaging, and informative content. Until next time, let's keep innovating.
The Agile brand.
You love podcasts, the stories, the laughs, the unexpected turns. But when this episode ends, the silence starts. Not anymore. Audiobooks.com turns that silence into your next great adventure. With over 450,000 titles, from bestsellers to hidden gems, your love for listening just found its new best friend. And because you already know the joy of audio, we're giving you 3 free audiobooks to start your journey. Imagine your favorite podcast, now with unlimited episodes. That's audiobooks.com. Keep the story going. Sign up for your free trial at audiobooks.com/podcastfree today. Because for podcast lovers like you, the end of an episode is just the beginning. That's audiobooks.com/podcastfree.